One of the most popular MMA podcasts underwent a major rebrand recently, and I'm going to talk about that in today's video. My name is James Lynch. So if you guys know the Overdogs podcast with Mike Perry, I think the podcast initially started with Mike Perry and MacMally and this guy who's called Bags. I believe his name's Josh. And it's this whole Overdogs show that they did. And one of the sort of great things about this show was that Mike Perry would kind of get his friends on and it would be kind of like locker room talk for these podcasts. And that's one of the unique things about this show was that we had sort of a fighter first podcast where they could get other fighters on and kind of shoot the shit. And it's been around for a while. You can see here they had a number of episodes here, but recently at the beginning of the month, they underwent sort of a rebrand. And this is something I wanted to talk about earlier, but I've been on the road the last 2 weeks. But the Mike Perry podcast is no more. Now they have a podcast that has been rebranded. You can see here on July 6th as Overdogs USA with Tim Kennedy. So a completely different show. And for those who don't know, Tim Kennedy used to fight in the UFC, used to fight for Strikeforce. Someone that I'm sure has some connection just like Mike Perry does, but it definitely takes a different tone because obviously there's a political side of this with Tim Kennedy being in the military and everything else. And Tim Kennedy's had his own controversy and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this just kind of came out of nowhere that the podcast was being rebranded and is one of the more popular podcasts in the MMA industry. This is a pretty big news. I haven't really seen anyone cover this, and there's been sort of no explanation as to why the show just changed over. I think Mike Perry was kind of the face of the Overdogs brand and the podcast and all that, and went through a few changes over the years. Like I mentioned, they had those 3 original hosts, and then it went to Mike Perry and Joaquin Buckley, but that didn't last that long as, like I said, Mike Perry and Joaquin Buckley are no longer part of the podcast, and there hasn't been, as far as I know, any announcement from Mike Perry or Buckley as to why they are no longer on the podcast. There is something that happened with MacMally, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but it's just a bit strange that there hasn't been any sort of like reason as to why they switched it over. It reminds me of like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air back in the day when they replaced, the mom, and they didn't say anything. They just had a new mom playing a different actress playing the mom here. So you can see here, Tim Kennedy's new show, Overdogs USA. Green Beret and UFC veteran Tim Kennedy is officially taking over as the new host of Overdogs USA. We're bringing in special guests from MMA, military, politics, and beyond. So you can see the tone of this has definitely changed. This is a bit more serious, whereas Mike Perry was like kind of like almost equate Mike Perry's podcast to being a little bit like Spit and Chicklets on Barstool, which is kind of like locker room talk, but in the form of a podcast. That was one of the advantages that Mike Perry had, was that obviously fighters would be a little bit more comfortable talking to Mike Perry than they would be talking to your average journalist, because it's going to be a little bit different and it's coming straight from a fighter there. So anyways, like I said, they've switched things over. I have not, let me know in the comments if there has been anything addressing this, but they've still kept the episodes up. So you can see clearly they went, through a change on this. And just the last 2 episodes have been with Tim Kennedy and Brian Callen, and then Tim Kennedy and Gordon Ryan. So those have been, sort of new here. And it hasn't been very well received so far. So for people who don't know, Tim Kennedy, obviously has, been in the military, but it's come out over the last couple of years that he's been kind of lying, he has been lying about his military experience to the point where people have been calling him out and saying stolen valor, like you can see in the title here. And, the first episode was Tim Kennedy addressing this, which I think is good because you can't just do a show without addressing the elephant in the room, which is the stolen valor stuff. So you can see here, here's just a clip here. It says Tim Kennedy acknowledges his past mistakes, and there's a 40-second clip here. But you can see people are not too happy. He did, and then he created new excuses for them and didn't cover all of them. Fog of war, 11-year-old brain. How about you upload the supposed hundreds of times when you corrected the record about your V device where the Purple Heart was in the process? Can't tell what's worse. Kennedy still acting like a dipshit, or Callen showing he doesn't know a thing. Blah, blah, blah. So you can see it has not gone too well. And again, I think it's, I understand them rebranding the podcast if Mike Perry didn't want to do it anymore, or Buckley didn't want to do it anymore, or whatever. I just don't know how this is going to translate well with the fact it's gotten a bit more serious, and you're using a guy who already comes with some controversy in Tim Kennedy. If you go look at their social media posts as well, there's a lot of positivity here as far as the announcements go, but it looks like they've been deleting comments. Because if you read here, the first couple are obviously, in support of it. But yeah, you see here, first episode and hopefully last. Was the account hacked? 250 comments and only 2 positive ones. I bet they have skin in the game or are personal friends with them. I can't believe you thought this was a good idea. Whoever told you, this dude has more stories than Walt Disney. Weren't you the host of the show? So Perry hasn't addressed this. And I don't, this is from a week ago. Mike Perry has not addressed why he's left the podcast. What could possibly go wrong? When did I start following this garbage? So again, I think it would be in the best interest of Overdog to kind of address this. Couldn't think of a more truthful person to listen to. Military plant. How do we believe you? I mean, this was going to be rough regardless. And listen, I wish them well. I don't know Tim Kennedy at all. There has been a lot of evidence to suggest that he was lying about a lot of things in his military past. This may be the heart of it, and hopefully he can win people over. But I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go with them doing a completely new format of the show. Obviously, it's similar in the sense that they're going to bring on MMA fighters, but I don't think it's going to have that lighthearted nature that Mike Perry's podcasts originally have. So, yeah. So again, one of the biggest podcasts, rebrands, no explanation whatsoever. There's a few little clues, though, that we can kind of look at as to why things might have been rebranded. So, and this is not fun for me to talk about. So you guys know MacMally. I've done some stuff with him before. He was on the Gambler's Perspective. I had him on my MMA Industry podcast a long time ago. Very nice guy. But it did come out a couple months ago that he allegedly, and I want to be very clear about this, nothing's been proven, but he allegedly abused his girlfriend. And this, if you just do a quick Twitter search, there's a lot of stuff on this. I just realized MacMally hasn't been around online lately, which is true. So again, Overdog Podcast rebrands. We've got MacMally, who has a huge following here, 173,000 followers. He tweets frequently. His last tweet was June 14th. And it's not even a tweet. I think it was just him retweeting something. He has not been active at all on social media since all this came out. So again, I'm not saying he's guilty of anything, but he also hasn't come out and denied anything either. Now, I wasn't able to find the videos because there were some videos circulating of him abusing his girlfriend. It did look like him, but again, want to be clear about this. Nothing has been proven as far as I know. No arrests have been made, nothing else. But if you read Twitter here, like I said, people are very much connecting the dots. Really surprised when women abuser scumbag MacMally stayed away. I guess when he got served last month, he knew he was cooked. Saw he lost his podcast too to Tim Kennedy. So people are putting two and two together. The only thing I'll say is like, he wasn't, I think, an active host on the show anyways, even before all this came out. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure the timeline was Joaquin Buckley came in and as the co-host, and MacMally wasn't even involved. So whether he was part of the podcast or not, I don't think would make a difference because I don't think he was a host even before all that. But still, not making light of any of this, just pointing out that I don't know if it's, I don't know for sure if the fact that this all happens and they rebrand the show is because of him. I don't know that yet. Bet MacMally comes crawling back again a week before the fights. Tell everyone had, and this was back in July. Few videos leaking of him hitting a girl and screaming at her like a lowlife. It's women. So people have taken notice of this. Vampire Legs, who does a lot of videos, says, I'm going to hold off on the MacMally situation. This was back on May 28th until there's more information, but all signs point to a guy needing serious help. MacMally's been really quiet for getting exposed for hitting his wife. So yeah, can't really come back from something like this. So that begs the question, is him getting in this trouble the reason they rebranded? I don't know. Mike Perry hasn't said anything. Joaquin Buckley hasn't said anything. But to me, this is newsworthy where one of the biggest podcasts in the space just rebrands and doesn't say why. Usually when there's a rebrand, you hear, oh, Mike Perry's got other things going on or whatever. The guy who runs everything, his name's Josh. Icebags is how he goes on social media. He's a co-founder of Dirty Boxing with Mike Perry, hosts the Overdog podcast, although he's not hosting it anymore. And he's barely tweeted either. Here's a couple tweets from July 15th, July 11th, July 6th. He used to be a frequent tweeter here. And I don't know if this has anything to do with the MacMally stuff, but he hasn't tweeted much either. He was actually a host on the show. Like I said, the original show was MacMally, Bags, and Mike Perry. And then it evolved into Mike Perry and Joaquin Buckley. And now it's Tim Kennedy. So yeah, just wanted to do this video because I think it's relevant. Again, one of the biggest podcasts in the space just rebrands. It looks like people are not a huge fan of it. I mean, the numbers are, well, let's check these numbers actually. 87,000. Did they really get 87,000 views? They don't show the likes or dislikes. 886 comments. Okay, they probably got 87K views, which is good. The last episode 3 days ago did 10,000 views. Again, you got to look at the comments and the likes. They don't reveal the likes. 107 comments on 10,000 views. Maybe there's some views being added here. I'm not sure. But yeah, like I said, I think Mike Perry had something really good going here. It was very unique, where it was just kind of like a Fighter's First podcast. I wish Tim Kennedy luck. I hope he's honest about everything. But I don't know how this is going to go. It's going to be very interesting to see how they navigate this going forward. But yeah, just wanted to make a video on this because I didn't really see anyone talk about this. And it's kind of big news when one of the bigger podcasts in the space rebrands and there's no sort of explanation for it. So that's my thoughts on everything. We'll see if anything comes out of this, if we get any sort of reasoning for why the rebrand came out. But for now, Tim Kennedy is now the new host of the Overdogs USA podcast, and it's gone in a completely different direction. So let me know your thoughts in the comments about all this stuff that I just pointed out here. What do you guys think? Are you tuning into the Tim Kennedy podcast? Will you not tune into it? Were you a viewer of the Mike Perry podcast before? Let me know. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.